perhaps so that I may get into the subject, want to find out perhaps your interaction with the internet. I'll probably just give a few examples. I think recently, and over time, there has been a culture of persons interacting, especially on the internet, with material that was originally put out at a different forum that then gets remade by certain other people, and some of this matter then goes viral. Just as a way of example, how many have heard the remix of Come Baby Come? The song, out of the press conference. Okay. Then obviously there is that song, Endless Love, between the President, George Bush, and Tony Blair. Somebody has seen that on the internet as well? Yeah, so that's what the writer and the person to whom my entire presentation is actually borrowed entirely from Lawrence Lessig, and the only thing I'm doing here is perhaps adding some audio because he's not available. Yes, so this is a bit of remix. I was not able to put any background music, and I'm not sure it would have been a good idea in an afternoon, but nevertheless, perhaps maybe a rap item would have kept us awake, but I'll try to be as brief as possible and perhaps explain what this is all about. Now, Lawrence is those of you who go to his website, you can see his biography and see what he has done over time, but he's quite the believer that time has come for us perhaps to reinterrogate the question of copyright. And for him, perhaps it's not even a reinterrogation, it is that perhaps over time, copyright has assumed a position that perhaps was not intended, including by, he says, the framers of the Constitution in the United States. But copyright, as they say, is a solution to a particular kind of problem, and in his view, it is a problem that we cannot run away from and have to deal with it in the sense that we have to give incentives to persons so that they can create and so that we can all then benefit from these creations. And we give these people this leeway, and then obviously through regulation, and the Copyright Acts in any particular territory is a regulation of this particular exploitation of persons' works, and we give them this incentive in order to create more free speech. I think when you talk about Creative Commons, the first question perhaps you'd want to ask is, everybody knows what creativity is, at least in this room, I would vouch for that. But the commons, I don't know, in relation to medieval England, I think majority would, those who are lawyers, and have gone through IP classes, you will remember being told about the tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons in the sense that if you allow a human being to get into a place where they then make use of whatever it is that they make use of, it is highly unlikely, and this is from economics research, that they will take care of that particular place largely out of the fact that they do not consider that that is theirs, so that the property rights that may attach to the commons are not ones that would lend themselves to these persons to then take care of that common. So that the tragedy of the commons is that if you allow people to just come and take and take and take from a common where people just own jointly and there are no rights for particular individuals, it is that then the commons is depleted and there's no more for everybody who was part of the commons to take part of. So I would want to think that in creating Creative Commons and using that term, Lessig, as the founder of Creative Commons, was looking at this question and saying, let us create this common and facilitate its rejuvenation over time so that that tragedy of the commons does not happen. And Some have, over time, tried to put him in a situation where he has to defend his positions, and some even know him as a person who calls for the abolition of copyright law as we know it today, but that is not correct, and he has stated that many times. These quotes are from a speech he was giving in a book that came out of a conference in Australia when Australia was celebrating its 50th years of the Copyright Act. Now, most of us are very lucky in this country that our Copyright Act is a couple of pages. In the Australian experience, it's a tome that requires several lawyers to look through, largely because also their legislative drafting is what is known as simple English, so that they write in a way that a regular person on the street can be able to read the legislation. So LESIG says that we limit this freedom through regulation so that give creators the incentive they need to create more free speech. But as with privacy, the right regulation is going to be a function of the technology of the time. He believes that with the advent of the internet, we need to be able to make a shift from that. And he proposes that this regulation would perhaps look something akin to what he's proposing. Now, the Creative Commons is as an idea mooted, is a facility and largely an online facility that allows for persons who would want to put out their works in the online environment, subject to certain licenses, to be able to do so in a manner that is with much ease as possible, so that there is perhaps a correlation between the traditional copyright as we know it, where you have to look out for the owner of the works and ask for their permission, and the manner in which that Creative Commons is established, so that we would want perhaps to go look at the database of those who have released their works through Creative Commons and the licenses they are under, and then you are able to determine for yourself under what rights are these works released. Now, I do not want to go into perhaps the gist of the entire background to Creative Commons, but I would perhaps want us to look at some of the licenses and perhaps what they do. Maybe you can ask questions later. And also to say that, as I said earlier, this information is entirely out of the Creative Commons website, and I am not a representative of Creative Commons. I do not perhaps ascribe to entirely to Creative Commons, but I think it's an idea that is worth considering, given especially our situation in what Douglas calls the Global South, where we are very limited in the manner in which we can advance certain of these issues, so that the propagation mechanism of our works is limited, and if we can find a facility where this can happen to a large extent, so that a creator of a work is known at creation and beyond, given the nature of the internet, then perhaps that may give persons who are seeking to have their works, especially if it's audio-visual work, maybe an imprint on the internet, and people can know that this is the person who created this work. It's akin to perhaps the video you are familiar with of the McMende platform, isn't it? In the sense that the video went viral, and then you needed to find out who are these creators of this, and perhaps in another environment, if there was a follow-up in relation to the persons who had done that, they would be highly successful musicians, not just in Kenya, but worldwide, because then there's that presence, so that an aspect of this will be mentioned by Gishuki. We were discussing here about some of our music in the 70s, and how come it is that certain artists are not known beyond certain localities, or indeed this country. So that is the nature of Creative Commons and how it was conceived, and it's been used a lot, and to a large extent also, a lot of governments are releasing a lot of information under the Creative Commons platform, so that this information can then be used to then further the aspirations of the people in particular countries. All the licenses obviously are for the benefit of the creators, that is the creators of the works. And they allow certain aspects to be done in relation to that work. The licenses do not take away from, the traditional limitations that the copyright frameworks comes with. That includes fair use, especially, so that these contracts, because that's what they are, do not go beyond the statutes. They are perfectly within the legal framework that is the statute, that is copyright law. Now, essentially, the licenses are on 3 layers. There's what is known as the legal code, and that's the underlying document. If you go on the website, you can be able to read, for instance, one of the licenses. There are 6 of them, depending on the rights that are given by the creator of the works. But the underlying aspect is the legal code, which is what the many lawyers here would want to look at to see what it says. And then there is what is known as the human readable layer, which is a very quick summary of what the license provides. And then there is the machine readable, which then allows for persons who do a search in relation to a particular work on the internet, for the internet to be able to recognize that that work is released under a Creative Commons license. So that's the nature of the layers on Creative Commons. And the legal code perhaps is what is most important to those who are artists and authors of literary and other works, so that this is what perhaps you'd want your lawyer to look at when you're releasing your work under the Creative Commons license, depending on what you choose, one of the 6 licenses that you choose. Obviously, even in relation to what other environments have done, is that you will find collecting societies, majority of them work closely with lawyers to be able to produce what are known as standard form contracts for persons who want to engage in particular industries, whether they are performers, so that then it makes it easy for everybody to know in this industry, if you hire this person, and this, what rights do they come with in relation to this question, so that is where you'd want to perhaps put a lot of emphasis on. For us, mostly, we are just very, 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 very serious consumers. We perhaps would want to know at the human readable form what these rights are in relation to a particular work that is released under the Creative Commons license, and that is what we would be going for, to read that, so that we would know this is what it says, this is what I can do, this is what I cannot do. That's essentially it, and I want us to go to the licenses. Now, the first license is the easiest one. It's what is known as attribution. And the only thing that the person wants is that you attribute the work to them. Yes. You can remix, you can distribute, you can tweak, you can do what you want to do with the particular work that's released, and you can even sell it after that, make money out of it. And this is recommended for perhaps maximum dissemination of our licensed material. In some environments and some artists in Europe have found that, especially in the Baltic countries, they have found that one of these licenses really works for them. Because when you are an unknown entity in Latvia and you want to release a song that you think would make a lot of money in the US, you can perhaps do this until Sony comes calling to record you. And then from there you can start making money, as opposed to sitting with your song in Latvia, in that particular country, and nobody knowing that there exists this particularly very bright artist. The next step is attribution, share alike, meaning that you remix, tweak, and build upon the work even for commercial purposes, as long as you credit the person who was the original creator of the work. And this is what is perhaps, I was asked to speak about copyleft and open source. I do not know that maybe Douglas would speak a bit about that. I tried to get somebody to come and speak about open source, but I wasn't able to do that within time. But this is the one that those of you who know about the GNU project, what many of us know as Linux, this is the kind of license that we are talking at, where I think the GNU project has what is known as a general public license. This is the almost equivalent aspect of that particular issue in relation to software development, where you're told that you can access the source code in relation to this software, you can tweak it, you can make additions, but then you release it in the same manner in which you received it from whoever it is that had done the last works on it. So it's a question of, we keep rebuilding in the commons, and then hopefully at some point this becomes a cultural aspect that we are all contributing, as opposed to most of us just having to purchase items from proprietary makers of software. It's something you'd want to look at. The third license is attribution, no derivatives. That's the way in which it is put. It allows for redistribution, commercial and non-commercial, as long as it's passed along unchanged and in whole, with credit to you. So that's you do not want anybody doing anything much more than you have done in relation to your work. There's that restriction. Now there's attribution non-commercial. So you can do remix, tweak, and build upon the work non-commercially. And you must acknowledge the person who was the creator of the work. I think attribution is an aspect that goes through all the 6 licenses. This is the 4th one. Although in this attribution and commercial license, you do not have to license the derivative works on the same terms as you got it from the author of the work. And attribution and commercial share alike, you can remix, tweak, and build upon the work non-commercially, as long as you credit and you license the new creations under identical terms. And then lastly, there is attribution and commercial and derivatives, which is the most restrictive of the 6 main licenses. Allows others to download your works and share them with others, as long as they credit you, but they can't change them in any way or use them commercially. That is essentially the 6 licenses under the Creative Commons framework. I would take questions at this point, I think.